Now, one of the key things that sets Warframe apart from most other games right now is its unique fast movement system. The fluid switching between gun and blade, being able to fly through the air, shooting your targets and then switching it up and slamming down into a group of them with your sword and blending them right up. This is one of the aspects of the game that new players will want to master pretty quickly, getting to grips with the basics of Warframe's movement system while also learning to aim at high speeds. Bullet jumping, aim gliding, slide attacks, slam attacks, dodging, rolling, wall latching. There is a lot to wrap your head around initially, but the more you move, the less chance you have of actually getting hit by the enemy, which is great because then you can also fine-tune your aim in game. And let me tell you, Warframe is one of those ideal games right now to help you perfect your aim. It's a game that originally helped me switch from console to PC. Enemies in game have this fast, erratic movement attached to them, which for me was perfect when learning to snap my shots from head to head. But of course you also have Warframe abilities that can freeze enemies in place completely, which will allow you to fine tune your aim that little bit more. But of course, before all of that, we're going to talk a little bit about the game's movement and of course fine-tuning your aiming as well. So there are multiple ways that Warframe players in the past have fine-tuned their aim. You're just going to need to figure out what works best for you, whether it's the Simulacrum, the testing room, the Jackal boss fight or other boss fights, or maybe even running solo missions and ignoring the main objective of that mission and just bullet jumping around from wall to wall, sliding and rolling, all while trying to land shots on enemies and tweaking your aim sensitivity to match until you get that sweet spot. The lower, of course, the better. The last thing you will want is a crazy high sensitivity in game, because this will force you to overshoot your target, then overcompensate to try and bring your reticle back, which of course is just going to leave you bringing it backwards and forwards. Unlike other games, you're also going to be moving at much faster speeds, while enemy AI moves, like I said, erratically as well. Now, before we can talk about fine-tuning your aim, first of all I wanted to show off or talk about two places that I know Warframe players actually use to tweak their sensitivity and make sure it is the way that they want it to be. First off, one of these places is called the Simulacrum. Now, this is the ideal way to fine-tune your aim in Warframe, but if you're new to the game, then you won't have immediate access to this testing room. You're going to need to level up your account before you can get your hands on it. In here, you can freeze enemies in place like targets and practice your shots, tweak your sensitivity while also checking out the game's movement and using it as much as you possibly can. Now, if you don't have access to the Simulacrum, like I said, because you're new to the game, then that's not really an issue. There is plenty of missions to begin with that you can just run around in and do all of the game's movement. But one of the first bosses you encounter is a massive droid, a four-legged droid called the Jackal. This spawns in little flying drones that you can practice on by bullet jumping over and back across the room. All you're going to have to do here is simply ignore the boss as much as you possibly can by rolling into his stomps, the waves you see from his stomps, or jumping over them, and then spend some time bullet jumping around that large room that he is inside while trying to take out the small flying drones, or you can even pop some shots at the Jackal himself in order to eventually take him down. Now, one of the other first places you can come across is a survival mission on Mercury that spawns in countless amounts of enemies. Do the same here, just bullet jump around the large rooms you find yourself in, trying to fine tune your aim as much as you possibly can while getting used to the game's movement system. Eventually, you'll be able to fine tune your aim even more, and the game's movement will come second nature to you. Honestly, Warframe is unlike any game I have played when it comes to the fluid movement and of course the high speed movement system, but when you combine both of those systems together, it is incredibly satisfying when you start cutting down large groups of enemies. Now, the movement basics in Warframe. Each Warframe has their own sprint speed, which of course can be increased with certain mods in games and abilities, but aiming your guns and basic melee attacks will stop you from sprinting, which isn't ideal. It's not something you really want to be doing. You don't want to stop, because when you stop you take damage. You can, however, keep your momentum going with melee attacks by crouching while sprinting, which makes you slide. Then while sliding, swing your melee weapon, which makes your Warframe do a slide attack. Slide attacks do a lot of damage. This is an incredibly effective way of clearing large groups of enemies or clearing a whole room with a powerful weapon. Whether it's a polearm or a whip, not to mention the array of weapons in game that only require you to aim in the general direction of your enemies. So you can crouch while sprinting and hit your melee button to do a slide attack, which will kill a lot of enemies. But something a lot of players don't realise when they first jump into Warframe is how useful the game's dodge or roll mechanic is. While rolling, your Warframe will take 75% less damage. That's forward rolls, backflips, side rolls. They all reduce the incoming damage you would have taken. It also removes certain enemy types from your Warframe. So latchers, maggots, these little energy leeches, which of course leech your energy, which isn't what you want. There is the swarm mutilist Moa spores that kind of affect your screen and make it hard to see. Basically, rolling will knock all of these off. So it's another system you're going to need to get used to, because you're going to find yourself rolling a lot in game. Now, bullet jumping and aim gliding. This is the core movement system in Warframe, the one that will help you rush through a mission tileset to an objective or rush to the mission exit as fast as possible. Crouching and jumping at the same time will propel your Warframe in the direction that your crosshairs is facing, while also dealing a small amount of damage to enemies that might find themselves too close to you. And bullet jumping is something you can chain together with your slides and rolls to avoid incoming damage, but also to cover as much distance as possible. So you can bullet jump, and then as you land, bullet jump again. So basically you can hop the whole way through a mission. Not to mention eventually combining this with aim gliding to kill enemies along the way. Aim gliding is when you hold down your jump button while you're mid-air, whether it's from a normal jump or from a bullet jump. Your Warframe will then glide through the air slowly, which allows you to shoot at enemies or aim yourself towards a group of them and slam into them with your melee weapon. It can also be used for challenge puzzles in certain missions, or to climb onto zip lines, or to enable a wall dash because you can run sideways along the walls, or a wall latch because you can just hang there if you want to and pop some heads. So as you can see, there is a lot involved in Warframe's movement system, and they're just the bare basics. As you get used to the game, it's going to become, like I said, second nature. Once you fine tune your aim, you're going to find yourself jumping all over missions while killing as many enemies as possible. And like I said earlier as well, it will be very, very satisfying. So hopefully this will help out new or even some existing players if there's any elements of the movement system or dodges that you didn't know about. Like I said, the Simulacrum is a really good place to learn or perfect your aim, but if you don't have it, there is plenty of different missions that you can jump into, especially if they have a large room in them or large tile set, for you to jump around, do the bullet jumps, aim gliding, try and pick off as many enemies as you possibly can. So again, hopefully this will help people perfect their aim a little bit more in Warframe while also getting used to the movement system. Do me a huge favour, hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, or don't if you didn't, and as always, thanks for watching.